Good to everyone. Today we're going to present about the business statistic assignment that we have done. The business statistic assignment done based on the data as given. The data has we choose to do this assignment is data subset B, which is mentioned about the species of fish. The assignment requires an understanding of whole of the statistic chapter, including such as topic of the calculation of variance and central tendency as well as ANOVA. This is because to perform this assignment, the data given are varieties of fish and their price, weight, place, and three variables of length and width. Thus, the variable that has been picked to accomplish this assignment is one of categorical variable, which is species of fish, and three numerical variable, which is price, weight, and height. Price has been chosen as a dependent variable while weight has been chosen as an independent variable. This is because independent variables' direct effect on a dependent variable must be measured. Changes in independent variable, for example, will cause the changes in dependent variable. In addition, the numerical descriptive measures are used to calculate the correlation coefficient, which is mean, median, mode, range, variance, and standard deviation. Apart from that, this assignment is beneficial since it helps us to comprehend the theory via real-world application. When we look at the next slide, the slide is given about information about ungrouped data. The calculation is carried out based on measurements of central tendency, measurements of position, and measurements of variable. The table has been provided the information all of the calculation. We have chosen one categorical data and three numerical data, which is weight, price, height, called as a numerical data, and one categorical data which is called as species. This ungrouped data is defined as the data as given individual points. When the data has not been placed in any categorical or no aggregation or summarized as taken place on the data, it is known as ungrouped data. Ungrouped data is also known as a raw data. When we see the accuracy in ungrouped data, mean calculated from ungrouped data is more accurate because its calculation takes all the observation in data into consider. But when we ask if the median in ungrouped data is more accurate, the answer is not always. Furthermore, the next slide is about grouping data. Grouping of data plays a significant role when we have to deal with a large data. Data formed arrange individual observation of variable into groups so that a frequency distribution of table groups provided a convenient way to summarize or analyze the data in terms of group data. Apart from that, it is more convenient to use group data than ungrouped data as it is provide more accuracy to the required result. The advantage of grouping data is it is help improving the efficiency of estimation. It is also allow for greater balancing of statistical power of test of the difference between strata by analyzing equal number from strata. So when we look at the table, we could see the calculation that is carried out based on the central measurements of central tendency, measurement of position, and measurements of variance. From these two slides, we could see the ungrouped data and grouped data. So from this, we could compare them and get a calculation that which data is get a more accuracy result. From my point of view, group data is getting a more accuracy results compared to the ungrouped data. Apart from that, the information is contained in the table is help to calculate the variance. Importance of variance analysis help to reveal where your business exceeded an expectation and where it's come out to short. Prediction budget can also help. The process of analyzing the variance reveal process in initiative and other activities that create a positive or negative result. In a project management, variance analysis help to maintain control over a project's expenses by monitoring planned versus actual cost. Effection of variance analysis can help a company spot trends, issues, opportunities, and trends to short-term and long-term success.
Hi, my name is Nurul Shafika bint Ruslan. My metric number is A22B0018. I will be presenting group data for height. As we can see on slide, we have created a group data of species of fish for height. And we come up with a workway to complete the table below. First, we had to do a class interval, which is a way to divide the data and group certain answers together. After we got the answer, we can do the next step to compile or complete all the data in table. After we had complete the table, we can do numerical descriptive measure such as mean, median, mode, quartile 1 and quartile 2, interquartile, range, and also the variance and standard deviation. The answer of group data for height can be summarized as shown in slide, which mean is 5.0527, median 31.2701, mode 24.3914, quartile 1 14.4193, quartile 2 46.1747, interquartile range is 31.73, variance is 3.04156, and for the standard deviation is 1.74400. Next, I will be presenting group data of 4 species. As we can see on slide, we have created a group data of species of fish and we come out with a workway to complete the table below. The answer of group data for species can be summarized as shown in slide, which mean is 3.8283, median 6.0994, mode 4.594, quartile 1 is 3.9193, quartile 2 5.8150, interquartile range is 1.8957, variance is 2.25986, and for the standard deviation is 1.5033.
Good day, sir and everyone. I'm Namitran Sandap Alagason and my metric number is A19A0398. I will be presenting regarding the representative manual graph. First, the bar chart graph is plotted for species. The graph is illustrated with the qualitative variables and also the x-axis represents the three factors which are good, medium and bad. As usual, the y-axis represents the frequencies. Next, from the graph shown, frequency polygon we can describe the 6 class intervals which are 1.7 to 86.7. From the class intervals we can calculate the midpoints to the plot graph. The frequency polygon graph is illustrated with two types of axes which are the x-axis and y-axis and labeled with competitor price and frequency to plot the graph. In the graph, at the midpoint of 41, the illustration is started to increase steeply and it reaches the highest point at 35. Then it started to decrease drastically to the frequency point 10, 5 and 1 respectively. Next, from the above histogram graph, we can describe 8 class intervals which are 0 to 64 until 455 to 519. From the class intervals, we can determine the midpoints for each of the class intervals. The histogram is illustrated with two types of axes, which is x-axis with unit width and y-axis with frequency. At the midpoint of 32, the graph started to increase and it reached the highest frequency at 21. Then, at the midpoint of 227, it started to drop to frequency at 4 drastically. Therefore, the histogram graph shape is bell-shaped, symmetric. From O'Keefe graph, we can describe the 8 class intervals which are 0.17 to 8.07 From the class intervals, we can calculate the upper boundaries to plot the graph. In the graph, at the upper boundaries of 19.5, the illustration is started to increase steeply and reaches the highest point at 60. Thank you. Hi sir, my next part is confidence interval. The denominator used to estimating the size effect sizes. Cohenst uses the sample standard deviation. Hedges correction uses the sample standard deviation plus a correction factor. Correction factor have two levels, which is the price and height. The 95% confidence interval can be different to this analysis. For price level, the lower boundary and upper boundary are 83.342 and 177.97 respectively. For weight level, the lower boundaries and upper boundaries are 89 and 149.41 respectively. Thank you. My next part is model summary. The R square value is 0.964, which means 96.4%. For the variation in fish can be explained by weight, height and species. Next is ANOVA. The p-value from the ANOVA table is less than 0.001, which means that are the least for the three variables. Weight, height and species can be used to model fish. The last part is coefficient and correlation. In the regression plot matrix graph shows the price and height. There is moderate positive correlation between price and weight. Subsequently, price against weight, it is seen that the higher the weight, there is moderate positive correlation between price and weight. Thank you.
Good day, my name is Anusri Anaprokmansega and my metric number is 8218240. Now I will be discussing the statistical analysis using software. We will begin by comparing the result of manual calculation and those obtained using SPSS software. As you can see from the data provided, the mean, median and mode values are largely similar, with only slightly differences in decimal point values. The same can be said for the quartile 1, quartile 3 and interquartile range data. Additionally, we can see that the variance and standard deviation value also have minimum differences. Moving on to measure of variation, we will be looking at bar charts, frequency polygons, histograms, and OGIFs. We will compare the graphs drawn by hand to those generated by SPSS. Starting with the bar chart of species, we can see that both the hand-drawn and SPSS generated graph are illustrated with the same scales. The x-axis represent the type of species and the y-axis represent the frequencies. Next, we have the frequency polygon of price. The hand-drawn graph shows a grouped data plotted graph with the x-axis and y-axis representing competitor prices and frequencies. The SPSS graph, on the other hand, is using ungrouped data and is generated with the x-axis for the price and y-axis for frequencies. Moving on to the histogram chart of weight, we can see that the hand-drawn graph is using grouped data and is plotted with an x-axis and y-axis. The x-axis represent the midpoints of the class interval and the y-axis represent the frequencies. The SPSS generated histogram follows the same format. And finally, we have the OGIFs of height. The hand-drawn graph is also using group data and is plotted with an x-axis and y-axis. The x-axis represents the midpoint of the class interval and the y-axis represents the cumulative frequencies. The SPSS generated OGIFs follows the same format. Next, I will be discussing a two-sample t-test assuming unequal variance. This test is used to determine whether there is a significant difference in mean between two groups. The data that was used in the analysis included 60 observations for both the price and weight groups. The null hypothesis for this test is that the price is not equal to the weight, and the alternative hypothesis is that the price is equal to weight. After running the analysis, we found that the calculated t statistic is 0.246487555 and the p-value is 0.805733118, which is greater than the level of significance, which is 0.05. This suggested that the difference in means between the two groups could have occurred by chance, and we cannot reject the null hypothesis. Moving on, ANOVA. ANOVA stands for Analysis of Variance, and it is used to determine whether there is a significant difference in means between two or more groups. The data that was used in this analysis included 60 observations for each of the price, weight, height, and the species. The ANOVA test was used to compare the means of these four groups. The result shows that the source of variance between the group is significant. The F value is 43.9664567 and the P value is 1.3117, which is less than 0.05. This suggested that at least one of the means of the group is significantly different from the others. For correlation, from this data, it can be concluded that there is a strong positive correlation between price and weight. With a person correlation coefficient of 0.982, this correlation is statistically significant at the 0.01 level. In conclusion, the report analyzed a data set of fishes captured at several places using SPSS statistics. The data included several variables such as species price, weight, length, height, and weight. The report focused on the species variable, which is a categorical variable, and three numerical variables, which is price, weight, and height. The report used frequency distribution, measures of central tendency, measure of position and range, measure of variance, and various types of graph to summarize and visualize the data. Additionally, the report carried out hypothesis testing using t-test and ANOVA, correlation analysis, and regression modeling to determine the relationship between the variable of interest. The report used both SPSS statistics and Microsoft Excel to execute the analysis and compare the result obtained from manual calculation. Thank you.